What's up? So over a long period of time I've used my good old 2014 iMac to get my work done, and here I'm mostly talking about photo editing, video productions and audio productions. And yes, in the end the iMac was always great because it was for me the perfect all-in-one machine that I can use for a variety of things. In my opinion it was a great and fast computer, including a really nice 5K screen, but especially in the last 2 years I noticed that in some situations it just wasn't the best anymore. Because as an example, it was really hard to edit the footage of my Canon R5 because it was just too much data and the new codec files and so on. So yeah, that's why it was necessary to upgrade my computer, because it wasn't possible to work with a lot of files, and especially I just want to get things done way faster. So that's why I decided to buy the new Mac Studio with the M1 Max chip with the 10-core CPU, 24-core GPU, 64GB of RAM and a 4TB SSD. And exactly that's not the cheapest version, but still in my opinion one of the best options that most people should buy. So let's talk about that a little bit. And let's start with the chip first. Yes, I personally got the M1 Max chip and not the M1 Ultra. And the reason is basically, in my opinion, it's not worth it to spend €1600 more for this chip that you mostly won't need at all. Because yeah, everything that I mostly do, so photo and video editing and sometimes some audio productions, are already awesome with the M1 Max chip. Everything runs smoothly, I can even use those 8K files of the R5 in Final Cut simple and fast, and to be honest here, 8K is currently absolutely unnecessary for most videos. And yeah, even if you work with the 8K footage a lot, you can still use the M1 Max chip, and that's why this decision was really easy for me. Of course, photo editing in Lightroom and Photoshop is great too. I absolutely like that my whole workflow is now way faster, and even the import and export time is now insane fast. So especially for photo editing, even this machine is overkill. You absolutely don't need the M1 Ultra for some Lightroom and Photoshop edits. You can easily use the base version here and you won't have any problems at all. On top, most apps that I use all the time are loading way faster now, and that alone is great because you don't have to wait a couple of minutes until you can start to get things done. The only downside that I currently have is that a couple of plugins need updates for the M1 chips in general, but most of them will get a new update soon, so that's currently not a big deal for me. But yeah, I definitely need to mention that because some people might have some problems here, so before you make the jump to the M1 chips, be sure that all important apps and plugins that you need to use support the new chips from Apple. In all kind of other cases, you might need to use a workaround method to get things done, so keep that in your mind before you get one. Another thing that you could do is to spend another €230 to upgrade the M1 Max chip to the second option with a 32-core GPU if you actually need it, but I decided to go with the 24-core version because it was available, and second, it's just awesome for all kind of things that I want to do. And yeah, if we quickly talk about the M1 Ultra chip again, well, in addition, the M1 Ultra is just in most cases overkill, and I don't think it's currently worth it to spend that amount of money on that. I think most people who actually need crazy high-end computers will wait for the upcoming Mac Pro, and then they are sad, and everyone else won't have a huge problem with the M1 Max. Because yeah, you can already do everything that you want with the M1 Max. The M1 Ultra is just another step forward, while the M1 Max is already overkill. Exactly, that's why a good tip is, if you don't really know if you need the M1 Ultra, you probably won't need it. And yes, in all kind of other situations, the M1 Max is just absolutely fine and the one that I highly recommend to buy. But next, let's talk about RAM a little bit, and again, in most cases 32GB is absolutely fine, but since there isn't an option to upgrade it later on, I decided to switch to 64GB just to be sure that everything is fine in the future. Especially if you want to use it for a long period of time, I would spend that money on that, because you never know, maybe you need it in a couple of years. So in the end, it might be great to get the 64GB RAM option just to be sure that everything's fine. And the last aspect that we need to talk about is the SSD. And yes, I've bought the 4TB SSD because I have a couple of things installed on my computer, and I definitely want to have enough internal storage next to my external hard drives. So that's why I decided to get the 4TB option, because it's enough storage for a variety of apps and plugins. But of course you can choose a different SSD version as well. This totally depends on what kind of things you want to do. If you can mostly use external hard drives, you can easily pick up a 1TB version and you're set. However, I wouldn't pick the 512GB option, because if you install a couple of apps and plugins, you can easily run into some storage problems. So this one is, in my opinion, not the best option here. What I personally did was to double check my current computer to see which option is the best for me, and that's why I bought the 4TB option. But all in all, I think 1TB should be the minimum here, just in case if you need a lot of apps and plugins. But yeah, in the end, so far I definitely need to say that I really like the Mac Studio. The upgrade from the 2014 iMac was absolutely worth it, and I highly recommend to check out the M1 Max chip, because it's in most cases the one that you really need. Especially in this case, I would spend the money on additional RAM and SSDs or even a new monitor, and not for the M1 Ultra. But yeah, these are my first thoughts about the Mac Studio. So, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you're new, don't forget to smash that subscribe button to stay updated for upcoming videos, and I'll see you in the next video.